put in the number 2 car by Billy Meyer. And in fact, here's Tripp Shumake.
Indeed it is. Shumake here in the near lane. Just a couple of weeks ago, his phone rang in Phoenix, Arizona. It was Billy Meyer on the other end of the line saying, "Would you like to drive my car for 2 events?" He didn't hesitate. Tripp Shumake, a former Southern Nationals champion. Now, opposite Shumake, the consummate funny car racer, the 4-time world champion, Don the Snake Prudhomme, Granada Hills, California. Maybe the best-looking funny car ever built, the Pepsi Challenger Pontiac Firebird.
This car with a 563 to its credit at the U.S. Nationals at Indianapolis Raceway Park has astounded everyone with its performance, but it has been inconsistent. He can run good, but he hurts the car. When he doesn't run so good, the car doesn't get hurt, but he sometimes gets beat. What can happen here? Tripp Shumake is trying to get him, and the engine explodes in Don Prudhomme's car. He's all over his lane, and Tripp Shumake comes home the winner and advances to the semifinals.
As Prudhomme was skating around in his own oil, it was Shumake at a 6:48, 231 miles an hour. Fortunately for Prudhomme, that happened early on the course, or he could have had a repeat of last year's fire. Here, watch Prudhomme now in the right-hand lane. Probably a connecting rod broke. That's the only thing that will usually put that much oil instantaneously out on the racetrack. Prudhomme doing a very alert job of driving. A lesser driver might have spun that car or even made contact with the rail, David.
Tripp Shumake out of his car, taking off the protective fire gloves, his helmet, and his face mask. He's got to be happy. As Steve told you, it was just a couple of weeks ago he was in retirement. They weren't doing much of anything, and now he is out racing and has worked his way to the semifinals here at the Winston World Finals at Orange County International Raceway. I'm Dave McClelland along with Steve Evans, and this is the man that is leading the points chase for the Winston World Championship.
You bet it is. It's Frank Hawley, and this is the man who has worn that number 1 for 3 consecutive years. Between he and Prudhomme, it's been 7 years since we've seen anybody else in the Winston winner's circle. Frank Hawley, a likable young guy from London, Ontario, Canada, drove in the alcohol ranks with his own car, actually pleaded and begged for a chance to drive in the big class. He got it. Raymond Beadle, the mustachio driver from Dallas, Texas. He is probably the best financed and maybe the hardest working of all the funny car drivers.
Well, he's got his work cut out for him as Frank Hawley is pulling a big lead. And Frank Hawley, by over a car length, defeats Raymond Beadle, and they continue their march to the Winston World Champion title. Frank Hawley, elapsed time 5:99, his speed over 238 miles an hour, as Billy Meyer showing the pressure, showing the intensity that goes through these drivers' minds as he gets ready to fire up for his next race. Steve takes a look at the comparison between Billy Meyer and Frank Hawley.
This is the funny car racing operation of Texan Billy Meyer, as impressive as you'll find in this sport. Not one race car, but 2, both carrying the logos of many sponsors, affiliated with actor Burt Reynolds and director Hal Needham. The cars are transported in a beautiful 18-wheeler with at least $250,000. It is jammed to the rafters with spare parts and equipment. Meyer will oversee today a crew of 10 men. He'll make the decisions as to how to tune the engines, but they'll do the heavy work. Talk about your contrast. This is the racing operation of the Chi-Town Hustler team, Frank Hawley's car. An old 1965 truck with 500,000 miles on it. There's no room for many spare parts, but that doesn't matter because they couldn't afford them anyway. What these guys have is talent. Car owner Austin Coyle is as knowledgeable an engine builder and tuner as there is. Hawley, the young Canadian, is not only a fine driver, but is expected to get down on his back between rounds, oil dripping in his face, and service the bearings, the bottom end of the engine.
Billy Meyer, after his crew has put it all together, comes out of the water. He has got to defeat Ken Veney in this round. Billy Meyer trying to catch Frank Hawley. He is the U.S. Nationals champion, the biggest win of his career for Ken Veney at over 254 miles an hour, the national record holder, the talk of the sport. Veney with problems out on the track, and it appears something they can't get it to back up. Steve?
David, apparently the reverser transmission has gone out in Veney's car, and the rules require that you back these cars up under their own power. You can't just turn it around or you would cross the center line and be out. It's a gift for Billy Meyer.
Oh, what a break for Billy. All he's got to do is keep it between the center line and the guardrails. Don't touch either one, and he did that with ease as Billy Meyer ran 6.09 on a single at over 238 miles an hour. He now moves into the semifinals. Boy, the pressure is on in this world champion chase. The 2,500 horsepower engine of Kenny Bernstein shaking itself to life as crew chief Dale Armstrong turning on the nitrous oxide bottle. A lot of work goes into these cars, and to get two ready for the same round of racing has got to be tough. Steve?
Billy said he's not on a record pace. However, we saw last year when Gary Beck ran the quickest time in drag racing history. If it cools off here later today, maybe.
This track gets very, very good later in the evening as it cools down. Our biggest problem is our motor. We may have to swap motors with the other car. It seems to be running a lot better, but I needed them to mess up, and apparently they're not. So all I can thank is Tripp for taking out Prudhomme, because that at least guaranteed a second so far. So now all we have to do is try to go up.
Right, Billy Meyer, who's got two cars to prepare for the semifinals.
We're into the last race of this quarterfinal round, and it is Garth Widdison out of Utah with the Battlestar car, and I don't think anybody expected to see him here against Kenny Bernstein, the recent winner of the Golden Gate National.
I'll tell you what, Kenny Bernstein, David, as we look over the reaction times that are furnished to us by the NHRA officials, has been super sharp. This is Garth Widdison, the Battlestar. He may have to gamble with a red line here. He's about 2/10 off the pace.
This is Kenny Bernstein, and he's not taking any gamble. He's on a roll right now, and he knows exactly his capabilities and those of his car. His crew chief, Dale Armstrong, has it prepared very well. As we watch him, Kenny into the pre-stage light first in the left-hand lane. Then Garth Widdison pre-stages in the right lane. They're both sitting and waiting. Garth coming into the staging. There's Bernstein, and it's a green light for both cars as they streak away from the starting line.
Again, Bernstein was away first, and look at the power on the top end of the quarter mile. It is Bernstein at 6.08, 237 miles an hour. Garth Widdison just didn't have quite enough in this league at 637, 205 miles an hour, but he did qualify, and there's a dozen that can't say that.
That's for sure, and he made it all the way to the second round of the 16-car field here at the Winston World